Today, our topic of the meetup is Hackathon ECMAScript 6. So in case you don't know what's Open Innovation Lab, it's a community located in CUHK. We promote open source, open data, and open culture. So here is the registration form for today. So if you don't feel comfortable at this time slot, you may fill in your preferred time slot. So it will be passed to you later. So we have Tony here, a senior software developer and also a student, master student. So he will introduce us to ECMAScript 6. So hand over the time to Tony.
Hi everyone. I would like to thank Open Innovation Lab for help organizing this talk. And so welcome everyone come here and hope you guys enjoy today. So how many of you are studying JavaScript? Almost. Okay. I'm Tony. I'm a MSc student at Hong Kong U. I'm also a former IE student here, and I'm a full stack software engineer. So after this introduction part, Andy is a news engineer. I will bring you hands-on exercise after my introduction, so you can try it out. So today is divided into several parts, and I will introduce a little bit about what is ECMAScript 6, and this part is quite boring, but that's it. So then I will go through some key features in ECMAScript 6, and finally I will share to you those useful tools I've used recently. I'll remind you that please install Firefox Developer Edition version 44 before the workshop, because some features we will cover in the workshop exercise may not be compatible in some modern browsers like Chrome, so you have better install Firefox first. So why it is called ES6? Because it comes from an industry association called EMA International. EMA International is an industry association dedicated to the standardization of information and communication technology. So actually, JavaScript is based on what we call ECMA 262 standard specification, and ES6 is released officially this year and named as ES 2015. Now the last version, which is ES5, is released in 2009, so 6 years ago. The feature we will introduce here, some key features may not be compatible in some modern browser platform. So in the last few slides, I will show the compatibility table to you. Great, so let's start now. So now we are going through those features list in this page. We will go deeper in some of topics, and other will just touch a little bit only. In fact, because there are so many small features in ECMAScript 6 and time is very limited today, so I really encourage you to read and learn yourself more and more later on after this session. So tonight is a journey all about code. Are you ready? So first of all, we discuss about the variable scoping. So scope means the area that the variable functions can be accessed. If you're a JavaScript developer, you may notice that there is no so-called block scope before ES6. You can only assign a variable using var, or you not to use var to assign a variable. So can you see a difference in these two examples? obviously the output is different, right? In the lab example, you may notice that the value is changed because we define text equals to hello world at the beginning. And this variable can also be accessed within the function. And therefore, in the function, the value of text has been changed. So finally, the output is also changed. So that's what we call global variable, right? So in the right-hand side, variable have same name is redefined within the function. But you can see that the output is not changed because the variable has what we call function scope. So it shows that the variable has two scoping, which is global scope and function scope. So what's new in year 6? There are two new assignment methods for a variable. If I use the let and constant, if I use let, it means I can interpret as the variable may be changed in the future. We can see in this example, text is reassigned in the if block, and only can only be accessed within this block. So therefore, the value of text is not changed in the output. But the variable we define text1 within the if block, and we try to output it, and you post reference error. That means if you use let to declare a variable in year 6, you use let. It means it does have block scope. So another one is called constant. It cannot be mutated later on, so you cannot reassign the constant again within the block. So let's see, you try to reassign again with the same name tags here. It causes type error here. And also something quite interesting is that when you define a variable, you use the same name again within the function. It doesn't cause any error. But just for goodness, I don't recommend you to use same constant name with different value. Just for your goodness. So someone may raise up a question right now. Is it possible to use let and constant to replace VAR? Yes, I think you can do it because it keeps your code more cleaner and maintains single source of truth. Then you know where the variable gets changes and your application becomes more predictable. But sometimes you really need a global variable. I don't know, it's up to you. I just recommend you to start to use let and constant. So the next topic is classes. I would like to ask a question. Can JavaScript do inheritance? Yes. Of course, even before year 6, see there is a plane here with takeoff and landing function, and we want to build an A3X0 based on the plane prototype. How can we do that before year 6? We can do something like assign the instance, see here, the plane instance to the A3X0 prototype to do the trick. And also, we can invoke a new instance of A3X0, say MRA A3X0. I'm not doing advertisement. There are some tests over there show the relationship between the children and the parent. So you can see MRA A3X0 is instance of A3X0. Also, it is the instance of plane. Yes, this code looks not really intuitive, right? You have to do a little trick. But what we can do in ES6, it looks really intuitive. Right, just define a class and extend a parent class and invoke and create a new instance. That's it. If you are familiar with React.js, you may know that you have to create class when you want to create a React component. So the syntax is really similar to it. Class is not just an implementation and syntax sugar. It's the concept of inheritance. So there are two different people in JavaScript community. They argue whether using inheritance or composition. Composition means to group all common methods in your factory methods. Just invoke it when you need it. Just like you see the jQuery, there are many things. You see dot attribute, dot class, something like that. It's also a composition. Also, when you try to do inheritance, be careful that to avoid deeper inheritance. That means I don't recommend you to do something like B extends A, C extends B, D extends C, E extends D, F extends E. Otherwise, when your project goes bigger and bigger, you may find that when you want to change your wood component, you'll be painful because all those children extended by the wood component will also get changes. So therefore, for your own goodness, try to keep your inheritance, the depth of inheritance no more than 1, and try to keep simple hierarchy. Next is arrow function. Arrow function is an anonymous function, but it's different from the classic function in JavaScript. There are 3 main differences. The first one is it is not newable. That means the arrow function you cannot do something like new blah blah blah. And the second, it has lexical this, super, new target, new dot target, and arguments. And this part I will explain in the next slide. And the final, the last difference is you can do implicit return. What does it mean? You can see the left. You can see the example in the left-hand side. You can see here. So what is the return? So name is an array of Alice, Bob, and Eve. So we use it. If we use this syntax, the output will be Alice underscore, Bob underscore, Eve underscore, and you don't need to type return. But also you can also write return like that. It will output the same result. So it's really convenient because you don't need to write return at the time. Oops. So inside an arrow function, this is not binding to the callback. So in ES5, what we are going to do is to assign this into a lexical variable self, and here we can access self within the callback function. So what can we do in ES6? We don't need to assign to a lexical variable. We don't need to do dot bind. We just use this. So just remember, arrow function is different from the class function in JavaScript. We have so many features, right? Are you confusing? Okay. The next one is promise. Does anyone hear of or use of promise? Yeah, great. So ES6 supports it natively. Also, there are some famous libraries like Github, Blooper. And if you are familiar with Node.js, you must have experience in writing callback, right? Callback, you can treat it as a defer and asynchronous action. So I use the term callback everywhere in Node.js, and callback always make you frustrated. Using callback is hard to catch error. So you can see the example on the left hand side, the upper one. Let's imagine that there is a callback inside a callback, and a callback inside a callback, and a callback inside a callback, and so on. And it turns out it's hard to do error debugging and how to trace the code. How to trace the code. So Promise is a workaround to deal with, to handle these problems, these kind of problems. You can see down here, Promise, you can use train action and catch the exception. Oops, you can catch the exception here and finally done. So it looks more elegant, right? So try to use the library keyword grouper. You will love Promise. So what is a promise? A promise represents an action that has not completed yet, but is expected in future. There are 3 states in ES6 promise. They are pending, fulfill, and reject. Pending means the initial state, not fulfill, not reject, but it is the initial one. And fulfill means the operation is successful. And reject means the operation is bad. So Andy sends me a link to show you live visualization. In his workshop exercise, he will also demonstrate it. So let's take a look first. Sorry. No.
It is dark. Oops. Yeah.
Let's see. This is the visualized version. And here you introduce the camera. So that's a glimpse here. Just remember. I just show the flow control you use Promise. So when you change it. Yeah, you know. So is it funny? It's interesting. Yeah. So just remember it, and you introduce in detail. Oops. Okay. So after Promise, the next big thing is generator. It surprises me a lot because the generator function can be paused and resumed, and this internal state is maintained. Means the value of defined variable is maintained once you resume the function. So the application is to do iteratable implementation, and also you can use generator to write a synchronous function using a synchronous style. So it is defined as using a function and a star, and it is the function is paused using U and resumed using .next. So you can see in this there is a simple example here. So this line you create a generator function, but this generator function is not executable until we do .next, and then we start the generator function and print out console start, start, and also .next will return an object including two property, which is value and then why it is 0 because U0. This is the value here. And so once the generator function executes until this line U0, and this function is paused. Why it is done false? Because there is still one line remaining. When we call .next again, the value is undefined. Why? Because you don't do anything. But done is true because you end the process. So here is one of applications using generator. I use a library called CUHK, which is a generator-based control flow created by TJ. TJ is a famous contributor in Node.js. Now he is not in Node.js community. He moves to Go language. So you see in this example, we have made two API call here. And the generator function finally returns an array of two objects, call 1 and call 2. And then this CO warps generator function, and we use .n because this wrapper returns the promise. Therefore, we can use .n to receive the value here. So it looks good, right? So generator is awesome with promise. So you can write non-blocking code in a blocking way. The next one is proxies. Proxies allows you to give custom implementations of some operations. Proxy is created with two arguments, target and handler. Target is which the proxy virtualizes. It can be any sort of object. It can be an array, it can be an object, or even another proxy. So the handler is an object or functions which define behavior of the proxy. Here I can only give a simple example here and illustrate the basic idea of proxy. So in this example, the target here is an object, and the handler is validator handler. You see? There is a set method within this handler. When a new property, say height equal to 180 is defined, the set method is then invoked. It checks whether the value is integer and when the property name is height. So it is really useful because you don't need to override the prototype of object. So it is useful in validation. It is useful in logging. Because you can define your custom implementation. Next is symbol, which is the new primitives type. So if you remember in ES5, there are 5 primitive types. They are object, array, function, string, and undefined. Here we have the 6th type. It is used to wrap other primitive type to provide a unit and immutable data type. So there are 2 methods to create a symbol. But remember, please don't use new symbol because available. And the first one is simple. Just wrap with a string or object, array, any kind of primitive type. Using symbol to register a new symbol. Using symbol for is kind of a little bit different because in symbol there is a global registry. When you use symbol for, you search through the registry whether the symbol is already registered. If yes, just return the registered symbol. If not, just create one to register. Symbol can also be used as object properties. Just to remind you to add prefix and some name clashes. The prefix here. When you wrap with a string, just add prefix. Prevent name clashes. Another one is template. In ES5, you may write your own template string. You need to add custom tag in a string and use stop replace method. But here you can see that you can just use the syntax like here. So the expected output here, let's see this one. Name is an array, others for if. We use a template, hello, sign, bracket name. So the output is hello Alice, hello Bob, and hello if. What we do it in ES5, we have to use quotation mark and quotation mark and quotation mark. So here is much simpler. Also, when we do multiple line string in ES5, we have to /n, right? But in ES6, you can take advantage in template string. Just use backtick, but not single quotation. Just remember it, because backtick is not equal to single quotation. So in template string, you have to use backticks. Next is spread operation. It is defined as ... If you have used MATLAB, you may be familiar with the syntax using here. It used to handle multiple arguments in function and also handles multiple elements in array. And these features may not be supported by some browsers and platforms. So when you use Node.js, please add a flag yes station before you actually write spread operator. So you can see here the example. Here, my function takes 5 arguments. Here, RGX is an array of 0, 1, and we invoke my function with this syntax. So what is V? V is -1. What is it? W? Because here we use spread operator. So W is 0. X is 1. Y is 2. And Z is 3. That is spread operator. The next is assignment destructing. It's a little bit like the previous spread operator. Still some, there is some difference. So, but again, you have to check the compatibility of this feature because it's still not well supported by by some modern browsers and some platforms. It is used to extract data from arrays or objects. So here you can see, you can treat it like a mirror. A is 1, is 2. And here in object, A is 1, B is 0. And remember, we do swapping in JavaScript before ES6. So what we do, we assign a temporary variable, and assign one of the two. It's hard to explain, right? So, let's see. In ES5, how can we swap variable? It's like that. Remember, we assign another one. Something like that, right? And let's see. C equals to A. And then
equals to B and B equals to C.
right. And B equals to C. Thanks, Andy. Okay. If you do swapping, you have to assign a new variable here. And if you use assignment disrupting and do swapping, just one line. It's so simple, right? Next is map and set. There are also something we call weak map and weak set. This time is very limited today, so they are not covered today, and you may read your own. So map is a key value mapping. And someone will ask him why we don't use object instead of map. So there is a difference between map and object. The key in map can be any primitive data type. Remember, when you assign a property name in an object, it must be a string, something like that. And it is also iteratable using for of syntax. So in object you cannot do iteration efficiently. Remember in ES5 you can do something like that. Let's say there is an object. How can you look through the property? You have to do something like objects, keys, and you return an array. You use something like for each in a function. So on. So here is hard to do iteration. But here when you use map, you can do it in a simple way. Set is also used to store unique values. It's a little bit like an array. But in array, the value can be repeated. Remember in array, you can have something like that, right? Repeat one. But in set, you can only hear unique values. That means when you add 0 two times in a set into a set, the set only contains 1 0 only. It is also iteratable using the same syntax as map plus. And a little bit interesting because set can transform back to array, and array can be transformed to a set. The last one is an object victorious. You can see in this example, in ES5, we have to assign name and value. When we assign an object, we have to declare the name of property and value of property. So if the name of the variable and the property name are the same. You have to do something like you can see there is redundancy, right? So in ES6, how can we do it? If the name and if the name of property is the same as the variable here, it's just these two objects. The output is the same, but it looks more simple. It increases readability. And also, the property of object can be computed. You can see here, we computed by concatenate first the name, so the output is the same. So far we go through those key features in ES6. Are you confusing? There are so many features. But some features are not covered today because time is limited. So you may read those documentation after this talk. Then we are going to look around the ecosystem and tools in ES6 right now. So here is the compatibility table. So I want to show you.
Back to the back.
Yeah. Is here. It is interesting that you can see Microsoft Edge support ES6 well.
Very well.
And also Firefox and Chrome. So when you try to implement ES6 features, you better to take a look at this compatibility. Okay. So if you don't want to see a compatibility table, what can we do? There are two useful tools in your development environment. The first one is called Babel.js. Babel.js is a JavaScript transpiler. It polyfills the feature in ES6 to ES5. It can transform your JavaScript file from ES6 syntax into ES5 syntax. So if you use React.js, you may touch something like JSX. Babel.js can also support it. It is used by Yahoo and PayPal. Webpack is a module bundler. You can apply JavaScript style sheet loader. For example, Babel, SASS, SCSS. It pre-processes the files and also support hot reloading. What does it mean of hot reloading? Hot reloading means you don't need to compile and refresh your browser manually. So you don't need to keep pressing the F5 button once you save the file. So once you save the update part, Webpack bundles the files automatically, and you can see the change in the browser immediately. That's what we call hot reloading. It's really useful in development. So if you want to try ES6 in Command Prompt, you may want to use the Node.js Command Prompt. It supports natively after version 4. But as I said before, some features in ES6 may not still not stable. But if you want to use it, say spread operator, assignment disrupting, you may add a flag after node and just one node command line. And also, if your node version is between 0.11 and version 4, you may add a flag called harmony. And also, I suggest to use NVM to change the node bundling version.
So there are many repositories that you can learn from, like React.js, Redux, KOA, Code, Q, Grouper, and you can learn how to code cleaner, elegantly from those great developers all over the world. And also, if you want to have a deeper learning in ES6 or JavaScript, you may try to follow the JavaScript style guide in Airbnb, and also a book called You Don't Know JS. ES4 and beyond is one of the chapters, one of the sessions. And also there is a blog called CUHK, which is a blog written by an experienced developer. So web technologies is changed very fast. It's hard to follow and adapt every technologies at the same time. So my suggestion is to choose something that you are really interested in and try to find out the tools around and play it. So don't be scared off and keep your curiosity. So that is the end of the introduction part. I will leave it to Andy. Enjoy the coding time. Thank you.
So after Tony's introduction, we have Andy from Initial Media. So he will give us a hands-on introduction, and we will have a taste of how ES6 is like. Thank you.
Oops. Okay, so how many of you already have Firefox Developer Edition? Okay, some of you. Please go to download it. For now, you can just use the latest version of Firefox and Chrome. It will work mostly, but for later, it will break in on one feature. And everyone use Git, right? Right? Knows how to use Git. Okay, so please go to this. You can see it actually. It's basically github.com/ANDYSHUXIN, that will be my name, and ES6 play. So that's the repo we are going to use today. You can just clone it, and github.com/ANDYSHUXIN/ES6 play. So go to this website and clone the thing. If you don't use Git, well, it can still work. Just download zip and decompress it. There's nothing special there. It's just a single index.html. And here's what we are going to build today. We are going to build a front-end search interface for GitHub. And basically, you can type in any keyword you want and press it, and it will return the things about that keyword. Okay, so it's silly, but the point is to try the ES6 features. Okay, so let's begin. So after you have this this repo, you need to check out to the play branch. The master branch will also work, but it's already filled with the code, the useful code, and we don't need them because we want to write from scratch. So let's start with the API first. Is it too small for you? So basically, the GitHub API is just use HTTP request to get those two combined api.github.com/search.repositories and make your queries. And because we have more people and we need the access token, so I created a dummy tokens for you. Those will work. So let's begin with promise. That's the focus of my presentation today, and I hope you can understand it a bit of topics, right? So today we are going to build a rather complex network of promises. So as Tony just said, a promise represents the result of action that happens in the future. And every promise has only two things. Either it returns you something useful or it throws an error. So what we are going to do today is we are going to try to get a search result with the first token, because those tokens could break. Why would they break? Because everyone has a limit, which is about 30 in a minute. As we have more people and we refresh your browsers, it might break. So if it succeeds, if it fails, try the second one with token number 1. And if it fails, try token number 3. Let's call it number 3. If any one of them succeed, the result, which is a string, passed to JSON.parse. So if they succeed, this is what happens. And if parse.json, because maybe some networking problems, parse.json will break and it can't parse that JSON. If parse.json fails, it goes to a generic last resort thing that's just console.warn, something went wrong. And if all three of them fails, this also goes here. This is the C. Succeed. And if parse.json succeed, it will display the result, just like you saw. So this is very complex network, but we can see in a few minutes this is actually pretty easy to implement with promise. So how do we do this? Let's first build this part. Let's build a get result. So, okay, let's start. Are everyone on this source already? And if you go to, it won't work now because the source is gone. So let's start. So let's build a function called get GitHub search result that takes two things as the parameters. The first is keyword, the keyword you're going to search, and the second is a token. Okay. Now, first we need to construct the URL for the request, and we are going to use the template strings. So how do we do this? URL equals to use the backtick. Remember, this looks like a single quote. It's not. It's the one next to your number 1 key. Okay, the first part of it, use $sign, is GitHub API root URL. The second part is search repo search path. So now this URL is just the two things combined. But we are going to make queries. So there is a question mark, and then we are going to say Q equals to keyword and SS underscore, double C underscore token. Underscore token equals to token. let's see if this works first. URL. And we call it with Hong Kong. And GitHub token 0. And then,
There's a misspelled typo in concept, I think.
absolutely. Then we refresh and we see this. And let's see if that will work. That credential already broken? Let's try a second. People are already trying this token. Already. Okay. Let's try another one. Okay, this is because I got a parser, but we can see it works. So okay, now we already built the URL. The next step will be logically we're going to get the content. This is just the basic AJAX stuff. So basically we make a request for new XML HTTP request, then request.open. The method is get. URL is URL. And now this is the tricky part. Normally you pass in those callback functions here, but we are not going to do that. Excuse me. I made a mistake. This is just a construction, and we now need to return a promise on this. So we are going to add return a new promise, which takes a function as the parameter, and that function subsequently takes two parameters, also functions. So they, by tradition, are called resolve and reject. And here we are going to use the arrow functions. So it looks like this. And we're going to pass in that. So now, request.onload, so the thing got back. Excuse me. When it is loaded, what do we do? So if request.status is 200, which is HTTP code standing for success, we are going to resolve. We are going to call the function we pass in, that's resolve, and we are going to pass in the thing called response text. Else, that means something went wrong. We're going to reject new error and request a response. Let's clean the code. And what if it went wrong already? Well, same here. This is a function, remember, this is an arrow function. And we are going to just reject new error network. Okay, and remember, you need to send this request. Okay. Now let's see how this function is used. So when this getResult function is called, it returns you a promise. A promise is not a result per se. So we can demonstrate this easily with console log get Hong Kong, let's say, and token, tokens. You're using those fast. Please don't use them too much. We only get about 90 every minute. And refresh. You see, printed. The result is a promise. The state is pending. This is not what we want. We want the result. So, but still, it's the same way that the asynchronous was in JavaScript. When you call this function, the promise was still pending. It's still waiting for the result. You can't just console log it. And in ESX, you might be able to do that with await. But right now, you have to use then. Now, this is the key function with promises. This is the only, actually, it's the only thing that really matters. So when you use then, basically, you are assigning the two functions, resolve and reject, to the promise you create. So here, we are going to, the first parameter is the handler that takes a response. Yeah, response as the parameter and log it. Okay. Let's see if it works. There you go. Okay, so this is, you can't just directly console log this one because it represents a result in the future. So you have to attach the handlers with then. So when you call then, that means when the result is come back and the response is response, console log it. Okay, making sense? Right. Now we are going to build this network. Apart from then, there is another function you can call on promises, which is catch. Catch, unlike then, only takes one parameter. Then takes two. You can actually assign another function here, and console log error. So if anything went wrong with this will be called. So we can try this. We can use the use a wrong token. Wrong token. And console log. Let's make a difference. Say this is an error handler. Refresh. And say okay. So when something went wrong here, the second parameter of the then function is called. And because sometimes we just care about the errors, this can be abbreviated to catch. And the first is not needed. Okay, let's try again. All right, still works. Now, we already built this part. This is okay. Now we want it when it fails, it calls another one. So how do we do that? Well, it's really simple. You just first we like to log the error. Then we return another promise. Remember this, when you call this function, you get another promise. It's the same keyword. Oh, excuse me. This should be access token 0. When that fails, try GitHub access tokens first. And what about this part? Well, that's also very easy. You just copy the whole thing and 2. So if the first fails, it will become the second. If the second fails, it will become the third. So it's just promises can substitute each other. This is called chaining of promises. So right now, we already built this part. But that's not very useful because we want them, when they succeed, we want them to actually do something, right? So how do we do that? Well, it's easy because these two catches doesn't handle success at all. The success just pass through. And how do we handle that success? You just attach another that here. And it will be a response. We give it a function. And how do we do that? We pass it to JSON.parse. So you can use a very verbose way like this. Let's try whether this works. It works, but it's not showing. We need to log it. then response, then it actually is an object already. Console log object. Refresh. There you go. It's already an object. Just now we are seeing a string. Now it's an object. So we already built this part. So how come all these success all goes to that? Because the catch only tells the promise to handle failures. It doesn't talk about success at all, so the success just passed through. Similarly, if something went wrong here, it will fall through because we are not assigning an error handler in our then method. Okay, so now we are going to build this part. If something went wrong here or anywhere, we want a console to warn us. So how do we do that? I just said the mistakes just pass through because our thens don't handle them. We are going to just catch them at the end and just say console.log error. Let's see if it works. We are going to break our tokens. Fake token. And then it logs the tokens, it logs the mistakes. And look at this. The first token fails. It becomes the second token. And you try the second token. And you succeeded. So you pass, when to pass, and when to display. Okay? So we have already built this complex network of things. We can try another one. Let's say the second one is also fake. Also fake. Refresh. First fails, second fails, the third succeeded. Notice it's an asynchronous calls, but they feel very synchronous. The second call doesn't happen until the first one fails. The third call doesn't happen until the second one fails. So that's what we value because our tokens has limits. We don't want to make all three requests simultaneously because that we will waste our limits. Now, all these are already built. Let's build the UI. So right now, you only can see in console. That's terribly useless. We are going to make. Where is my? Make this part much more better. Much better. So right now we already have the data. The data is like this. This is the schema of that data. A bunch of stuff. Now let's start with printing the total count of 40 onto that. I already prepared a div called div result. Let's work on that. So instead of that, we are going to get div result equals to document.getElement by ID div result. Div result. Let's use the dangerous method is like this, and we are going to use the template string again to let me spell it. Object dollar object dot total count. Let's see if it works. No. I must misspell something. It's looking red. Ah. Okay, there you go. 318. So if you search Hong Kong, which is not here, but I didn't capture this value. I just used the hard coding, so you get an idea. And so let's make it beautiful. Total count. Refresh. Looks better. Now, but not only do we have the number of counts, we also have exactly those repos that has Hong Kong in it are. So let's look at it. It's called items. So we are going to extract items equals to object dot items. And for each item, now this we are going to use the of. So let item of items. So you might be asking, what does it differ? How is it different? Let item of items and let item in items. The difference is when you iter with item in items, you are iterating with 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. But when you do this, you directly have the exact value of that array. So which looks like this. So let's first just add their names, which is simple with template. We just use like this. And actually you can write very complex things like this. Okay, div. And it's going to be the name of it. Full name, so item dot full name. I made a mistake again. In HTML. Alright. Refresh. Looks better. Alright. You can even, if you're not satisfied with it, you can make it a link, href equals to the item dot, if I remember correctly, it's called HTML URL. And then, yeah, that is also possible. You can even make it prettier with something like this. This is the power of template strings. So refresh again. All those are on. So when you search Hong Kong, you got this. The first one is data science at Hong Kong. Second one is electrical watch. And I think it's about the Legislative Council of Hong Kong. So good. What about descriptions? You also have descriptions because links are boring, right? We don't know. And the description is rightfully contained in the description value. So div, you can just like this, item.description. And then refresh. Alright, you've got all those descriptions. Now, because time is limiting, I'm going to just show you yet another powerful feature of ESX, which is process. So basically, process change the fundamental ways the objects are manipulated. Right now, we are using inner HTML. If you have some experience in web development, you know setting inner HTML directly is very dangerous. And why is that? Let's change the keyword, because I didn't implement that keyword part. Let's just use hard coding. Okay, let's see if it still works. It does. Now let's play a trick. Let's search XSS test entity. That's one of the repo that I wrote. And if you do that, you see that. Why are you seeing that? That's strange, right? Why is it popping out an alert? Well, that's because I wrote my description in a very weird way that says, please lower image, which refers to nothing, which will fail, and when it fails, alert XSS. That means if you set inner HTML directly, your browser will be executing a script written by me. And that could be devastating, because your cookies can be sent to my server with JavaScript. And we don't want that, right? So what do we usually do is we need to filter the incoming strings, which could be nasty. So we are going to play a different way. We are going to make this div a special div. We are going to wrap it with a proxy. And this proxy is going to do the data validation. If it finds any image tag, for example, it will remove them. So let's do it here. So let's create a, let's comment this out first and rename the old one called raw div result. And we're going to create a new one called div result. It looks like the old one, but it's a proxy. And a proxy function takes two parameters. The first one is the target, which is which is the basis of your proxy. So basically, proxies usually act just like other objects. In this case, just like raw. But it has a handler function. And it says, it's a property called set. So basically, when this div.result gets some property set, this method is triggered instead. And it should be a function that takes three, actually can take four, but we only use three. The first is target, which is the target that's receiving the property. The second is property. The third is value. So basically, when div result, the new div result, gets some property set, in our case, in HTML, this will be called instead. So, and we're going to say if property equals to inner HTML. So this is dangerous. Let's not do anything first, just console log in HTML is set and set it. So inner HTML equals to 1. So let's just first do this simple logging first without a validation. Else target.property. If it's nothing else, we just pass it. Okay, so normally this is all that's necessary, but as we are also asynching it, we need to also implement the get function, which also target a property, and which is very easy, just return target of property. This is necessary because if you don't have this, your function may break. Because div result is not a native object. It's actually a DOM object. And div result doesn't really have an inner HTML property. It's defined on this prototype. So you need this to ensure that the inner HTML is still accessible. Now let's refresh. Oh, inner HTML is set. So we already captured that. So whenever inner HTML is set, we know it. And what does that mean? That means we can easily create our own filters, for example. Oh, I forgot to return true. So basically, you need to return true to signal that the setting is successful. And, oh, oops, still SSS. No problem, we're going to fix this. So replace. We're going to replace all image tags. So we need the regex, basically, replace everything that's between image. That's not image, and this is complex. So this should work. Replace this with nothing. HSS. Let's play with this. So refresh again. Look at that. No longer saying HSS because the image is replaced by our proxy. And you need it, if this is not working on your browser, that's because your browser doesn't support proxy yet. It's pretty new. You need Firefox 44, 45 to make it work. And so I use Firefox Developer Edition or Firefox Native. This will work. Use Chrome, it won't. So that concludes my demonstration. I'm not sure what else do you want to play with. Yeah. Let's stop right here and see if we have got questions. Good.
So, any question for Andy? Feeling confused?
Too fast, man. So I wonder, which stage are you at? Anyone did the promise part? Did you succeed? Anyone? No, some of you. Okay. And all right. And okay. I suppose time is up.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
So, I think the completed code is
It's
already
online.
in
Yes,
the-
it's already in that. You can just check out to the master branch and you will see the complete code of how it works. Okay.
So at current state, you recommend to use ES6?
Yeah, sure. Why not? Well, the thing is, you don't have to wait for all the browsers to update because you got Babel, as Tony just introduced you, and so with Babel, so basically Babel works on any browser that supports ES5, and some of the features cannot be implemented. For example, proxies, because it's too low level, so it has to be native support. But other than that, it's pretty good already. And if you also combine that with the native supports of your own browsers, it's even better. So if you use Babel, plus you expect the user to use some modern browsers, you are pretty good already. And yes, and it saves a lot of time.
For HTML5, we
Yes.
have some concept called polyfills.
Yes.
So for ES6, is there anything that does this?
Yes, yeah, they have, basically Babel is a gigantic polyfill that polyfills a lot of things over. If you need specific polyfills, yeah, sure, they have that. And yes, there's right. So let's call it a day.
I've heard Tony talking about
Yes.
Webpack.
Yes.
How does that differ from a build tool like Github or Run?
Oh, okay. There is some overlap, but there are two levels of things. Basically, Go automates things for you. It can do a lot of things. Webpack, long story. Basically, it used to be the case that front-end packages are managed by, let's say, our, and but the backend community got this npm, which is a package management for Node, and it has some superior features. And for example, it can manage multiple versions of the same package in your dependency tree. So Webpack essentially can incorporate those node packs. I can show you an example of how this might work. This talking is kind of. This is one of the React apps that I wrote, and you can see from the. So this is front-end code. It's supposed to be running on your browsers, but you can use this Node JS common JS type of. Is it too small? So you can use this. When you say require normalize.css, that CSS is imported to your current component. And when you can also use import React from React. And basically, Webpack under the table will help you to import those things. So you can act as if your code is running on the back end, but still your front, ultimately it's the browser that's running this. The browser doesn't know anything about React, doesn't know about all those components. But with Webpack, you can just write like you are writing even, I think, Python like that. And it's much easier than, for example, you have to to inject those script tags into your HTML, or you have to use other AMD style, which can be awkward from time to time. So I think this is really convenient. And Webpack not only loads CSS and JavaScript, it can load images. It can help you to embed those small images to save HTML requests. It can also do all the compressing, all those minification. So I said there is some overlap with Go and Grunt, yes, but not entirely. A lot of things cannot be done by Grunt. Yeah.
I see. Any more questions for Andy?
Try ES6 with your JS.
This is it. Look at it. Yeah, and you can see this one. This one is defining a function in an object, but you are not saying component will mount column function bracket. You just write like that. It saves you time. And arrow functions. Yeah, it's completely ES6 already. And so yes, we tried it, and it's good in general. This is online. You can check. A lot of people are already writing even EX7 already, and also with the help of Babel. And well, this is not ES6. This is JSX, which is the React grammar. So it's not part of it. Yeah, mostly it's ES6 already, because with React, you already need to compile those JSX into native JavaScript. So if you use Babel, Babel has native support for both ES6 and JSX. So if you use Babel, they will do everything for you altogether, and that is very convenient.
Any more questions? If no, let's give a backhand to Andy. And also Tony. Maybe we'll head over next door, next room, and have some snacks, and let's chat.
Thank you.
Thank you.